Innsbruck, and we're actually at the track which is just up the hill from Eagles. Beautiful scenic location, as evidenced by those gorgeous pictures on a gorgeous day, as the air and the ice temperatures remain just below freezing with a season low 67% humidity reading. And tomorrow for the women and the sprint, it's expected to be just as nice. Earlier today it was the men, but we get ready for run number 2 of the doubles competition on this track, which twice hosted Olympic Games. In fact, if you walk along the track, you can still see some remnants of the 1964 natural track. This one was originally built for the 1976 Games and has been modified several times since. One run of doubles already underway earlier today. Top 3, Nagler and Malaya. After not qualifying a week ago in the race in Altenburg, they are in podium position. And now we have as close a race as you possibly can. Stoy and Kola in second place, just 1/1000th of a second behind the World Cup leaders. The brothers Sheiks from Latvia, Joris and Andris, leading the way. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. Here's a look at the start list, keeping in mind also that the top 15 will qualify for tomorrow's sprint competition. And as I bring in my partner, Sam Edney, Sam, not only does 1/1000th of a second separate the top 2, they are tied to the thousandths among their start times.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. This is Eagles in a nutshell, just tight racing. It's going to be close right down to the last couple sleds here. Makes for an exciting race. I mean, hey, if I'm staying up all night, this is the way to do it.
We will open things up with the 24th place sled after run number 1 from Romania, Vasily Zitland, Darius Zerban. Romania qualified a man into this morning's competition, Vali Cretu, as he does every week. Unfortunately, Raluca Strama Tararu, I believe, just missed out in qualifying Romania in all 3 disciplines this weekend. And as there will be no sprint, she gets an early exit to her, early start, I should say, to her holiday season. But we start run number 2 here in Eagles.
Yeah, and again, what we're going to be looking at is these start times and the start curve, which can be so tricky and create so many issues for some of the double sleds here. The Romanians through the Kreisel, fairly clean, a little bit early on to 8 there. You can see him driving, top man driving the sled. His legs are bouncing around there, but also making some bigger steers.
And the bottom man does make small adjustments, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, it's really a team effort here. Just bottom man's the one with contact of the sled and really making those fine movements, really to smooth the rhythm, make the sled on and off curves as smooth as possible, accelerate the sled.
40.129, considerably better than their first heat, which is not unusual to see with the first sled down the hill in run number 2.
Great shot going through curve 9, which can cause so many issues for the double sleds. But today we've seen some really good lines. Eagles, it varies year to year how the track is built through there. Some years it can just be such a headache for all these teams. And other years, they just seem to manage it and cope with it a lot better.
Ukraine placed 2 sleds into this weekend's competition. They sit in 22nd and 23rd position after the first heat. Here's the first of the duos, Yor Shtakov and Andrei Lishetsky.
Yeah, I had to hold the drive a little bit longer there coming off of curve 5. Biting into the ice, slowing them down a little bit. Essentially every little drive you do on the track on the way down is creating a bit of friction in the ice, so you're slowing yourself down. You want to try and let the sled run, gain momentum and velocity the whole way down the track. Good little correction there out of 9. They seemed a bit unstable, but he just held on and they're back on track.
1/10 of a second up on the leading Romanians, who came down the ice first. They spritzed this track in between runs, meaning they've watered it to make it fast and slick again. 1:20.556, the 2-run combined time. That's what counts in the final position. as the Ukrainians are through and likely done for the weekend unless they have a lot of help in moving up 8 spots into the relay, or into the sprint rather.
There's a good shot of that start curve right there. That was well handled. So coming off that corner, the top man's driving with his legs, whereas the bottom man is using his shoulders and probably the contact with the sled to make sure that that sled's coming off in a straight line. Unique compared to the individual singles events, just to see a team working together going down the track.
This is the second Ukrainian team, Hoy and Levkevich, 22nd place. Get a little opportunity in the early going just to talk to everyone about the COVID protocols. They are very strict in this sport, and that's the only reason really why Luge has been able to hold a World Cup, with regular testing, cohorts separating. Changing rooms are all but denied of athletes. They're very controlled. They, I believe, are offering the vaccine, the third dose, the booster, to all athletes tomorrow or the next day prior to the holiday break. They're taking it very seriously, as of course, Sam, is China.
Yeah, and that's, it's, if you're going to want to see the season finish out and get the Olympics off without a hitch, then you're going to want to put a lot of focus on that. And the FIL's done a great job from what I've heard.
And that said, Austria, among many other nations, has in the last 48 hours even tightened its restrictions due to the spread of the new variant. Good run here, 1/10 of a second up on the first two.
Yeah, that was a really solid run from the Ukrainians there, the second team. Always a good feeling to be done for the weekend.
Zach DiGregorio is from Medway, Massachusetts. He partners with Sean Hollander from Lake Placid. Hollander, at least Hollander, was a former singles competitor. I'm not sure about Zach, but I know Zach has had a podium in the Junior World Cup in doubles.
Nice synchronicity on that start. Both of them working together. A little bit rough on that start there. Oh, hang on, they got it.
It's a start curve. It's a tough curve. As you mentioned, there have been crashes right there in that start curve over the years.
Yeah, over the years you'll see one, the odd team that will be off just a bit, maybe half a sled width over to the left, and you just can't cut it around that corner.
I think I remember a race where an American, Becky Wilczak, turned around backwards in the start curve
yeah.
and started heading towards the Kreisel the wrong way.
Yeah, just, issues there going into 14. They hung on though, all right. This is
1/10 of a second and back.
Yeah, it was a good run, a little small, even that start adds up down the bottom, and then even issues down in the labyrinth. Young team though for the Americans, and it's great to see them fielding this team and qualifying for the World Cup. Every race run you get is just valuable experience that they're going to take further down their career. So it's great to see them.
It's been a long time since the USA has had 3 sleds showing up at each World Cup stop. It's very likely that only one will qualify for the Olympic Games, but still, as you mentioned, the experience being gained.
Yeah. Doubles is such a tough field now to qualify that second sled. It's going to be just a battle, looking at the top 4 or 5 nations who all have 3 sleds. It's going to be a battle to get that second sled in there.
Tomas Vaverchek and Maciej Schmish up now from Slovakia. They had an incident during the training in Beijing on that track prior to the Olympic test event, and it opens the door for what I promised to be a clarification. I was talking earlier about the Polish men's singles slider, quote unquote, crashing. We need to be real clear on that, Sam, that was equipment issues. They left a gate, a block in the track, and that's what Sokovic went into. It was entirely a mechanical problem by the track people, which made it that much more unfortunate.
Yeah, it's, I mean, completely unfortunate. It's a slider's worst nightmare. I mean, a track's worst nightmare as well. A barricade that divides, you know, two areas that the track maybe joins at a certain location. And I mean, you see a brand new track, major language barrier, and something like that happens. And it's just, again, thankful that there was nothing more severe that occurred.
Sure.
But,
and Summer Britcher was quick to point out to me that, you know, it was not an error by any stretch by Miła Sokovic. In fact, quite the contrary. He was lauded by how well he was able to avoid even further damage to himself.
Yeah, you never want to see that, any athlete and any track for that matter. And it's just, again, it's a great learning experience for a new track, a place that hasn't really experienced a lot of sliding sports before. First track in China, of course. And, you know, hopefully the only time it ever occurs.
Now the first of 3 Russian teams in today's World Cup doubles event, Stanislav Maltsev, Dmitry Kalilov, the newest of all of the Russian doubles teams, and we've seen 5 or 6 different podium doubles teams over the last 4 seasons or so. They had a rough first run as the final sled down, and they find themselves back in 19th place on the outside looking in hopes of being in the top 15, but trouble right there on the straightaway.
Yeah, right away off the get-go in curve 5, a little bit of a push to the left coming out of there, and then out of Kreisel. You know, I'm wondering, first run seemed like they were pretty secure and safe, and maybe they pushed the setup here on the second run, and a bit of, you know, discomfort for them, trying to find their way down the track and managing the bottom section pretty well, but those arrows up in the top section are just going to eat away time. No chance of making a move in terms of standings.
The 5th out of 6 in the early going here as Slovakia leads over a pair of Ukrainians, with the first German sled up next and poised to take over the lead for a while.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a throwdown run. You know, Edgar Bennekin, world class, arguably one of the best teams in the world, a favorite for heading into the Olympics. And, you know, these teams are always pushing the limits, trying to find what setup works, how they can be quicker. It's so tight between these top teams.
And as I mentioned, they didn't have exactly great results last year on this track, as they were only on the podium once. That was a 3rd place in the 2 races. Tony and Sasha up now, and they're in 18th place. Now, if they can put down a time that would put them in the top 3 after the first heat, which we fully expect them to do, then they could essentially move up, I want to say, maybe 10 spots, 9 or 10 spots. They could be the Jonas Mueller of this doubles race.
Yeah. Oh, there's got to be one in every run, you know, every race. And these guys are fighting, get back into the sprint, salvage some points of today's race. They can come out, you know, tomorrow, try and have a solid outing on the sprint race, and, you know, it's a minor blip in the overall picture.
That's a great point. They're 2nd in the overall standings behind the Latvians, so they do need to get into that sprint competition.
Yeah, a little off through the labyrinth there. Rhythm a little bit off, but overall a really clean run. Look at that, 39.7, they're right there.
39.72 would have put them in 5th place in the incredibly tight top 5 standings after the first run. But more to the point, 39.7 probably can, as I mentioned, that'll get them up several spots. I got to believe into the sprint.
Yeah, I'm confident that will get them into the sprint, and then they'll, you know, reset tomorrow, come in, one run, make it as good as it can be, and see where they end up. And you know, these guys, that's a good reset for them. Also, you gotta think that any sort of adversity that a team faces in an Olympic year, it all goes into the memory bank of how to cope with it, what to do, how to avoid it. A big thing, looking at Beijing.
The Koreans are only up by 9 thousandths of a second over the leading Germans, and we expect that will turn red about the time they have their third paddle. And to that point, you got to be in the top 15 to make the sprint, and it's full World Cup points. There are sort of two races within the race this season, Sam. There's the World Cup overall, and then you can drop no races, but there is the bid for the Olympic qualifying, and new rules now state all athletes can drop 3 results this season.
Yeah, and it's, I agree with it. Athletes that were at a disadvantage because of a sled that was held up in China. I mean, it is. There's a definite disadvantage to that. It's definitely a reset mode for a lot of teams. I think that came out of Beijing and possibly that double Sochi World Cup. Now they're thinking, okay, let's focus on these next 4 races. Let's get through, Altenburg Eagles reset over the Christmas holiday, and then make a charge in the next 2 World Cups, and all of a sudden those who might have been on the fringe of the World Cup or an Olympic berth are now looking good. So it's going to be an exciting, next 3 races of the Olympic qualification period.
And as the Koreans fall a distant second place behind the leading Germans, Egert and Bennekin, we move on to Team Poland, Wojtek Chmielewski and Kuba Kowalewski. And Sam, as you know, the Canadians famously would sometimes miss the last race or 2 prior to an Olympic Games when the team was set and they would just prepare. In this year, I don't know if you've heard anything, but in this year, when you can drop 3 results, and St. Moritz isn't exactly the cheapest place to spend a week, do you anticipate seeing scaled down fields after Sigulda?
I mean, scaled down, possibly. I would say that there's going to be a focus on the Olympic team. I think any Olympic athletes, they're going to be there unless, because we're still talking about getting their seeding locked in for the Olympics.
Right, great point.
But I could see maybe the 4th and 5th athlete on the on a singles team maybe being left back or going to an alternative training week. But it's all going to. I mean, teams will have to look at where are they in the overall picture, where are they in terms of funding, if different nations have different funding criteria. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, this year just doesn't also allow for a lot of alternate plans. There's not a lot of track time with limited tracks. Koenigsegg out of the picture just eats into a lot of track time availability. And then also you got to think of COVID too. It's not as easy to go from split the group up, go from one location to another location. So a lot of factors come into play for sure.
Polish team kept it in the green considerably longer than most people might have thought, but then they gave away about 1/10 of a second on the lower S's. Not surprisingly, Germany stays out in front, but a good day for Chmielewski and Kowalewski, who will still need some help to make it into the sprint competition tomorrow. So now we have all of the sleds that have effectively put themselves in that position. 15th place first, the first of 2 from Canada, Devin Wardrope and Cole Zajanski. Cole, that man right there, has some family that has traveled all the way over from Western Canada to Innsbruck to watch the World Cup racing.
Yeah, most of this Canadian team, all of the Canadian team, not able to go home. And I mean, these boys, a little bit of a scuff there. It looked like out of 5-6, that's going to add some time. I mean, they're already in tough to pull ahead of these, the world's best German team. But, for these guys, a appearance in the sprint relay or the sprint cup would be just huge for them. It's a really solid team. Let's see if they can just put together a really solid bottom labyrinth section and big issues. That's not where you want to be going into 11.
They need to be in first to officially be in the sprint. If they're not, and they won't be, they will need some help. They drop back 2 positions. And again, very simply, that means they would need 2 subsequent teams to fall behind them for them to make it into the sprint tomorrow. Wardrope and Zajanski through, they're finished. Their best result this year was in the opening weekend on the Olympic track, where they finished 8th in Yangzheng.
Yeah, and these guys are, a great story. Young team for Canada coming onto the World Cup, showing a lot of consistency, but this is expected. Little rough runs like this, they just need more runs down every track. They got to get more comfortable as a team. I mean, they're so young. Limited runs on every track they're going to go to this year. But to see consistency building on weeks, it's a really positive sign for them. So good job to the boys.
Mazda and Turdeman are also on the inside at the moment, looking to make it into the sprint competition tomorrow. The two Americans grab the handles, sitting in 14th place. Their advantage over the leading Germans is a pretty good one. 1600ths, but again, we just saw Tony and Sasha do what we fully expected they would, and that on a normal day is a couple of tenths faster than most of these sleds.
Chris and Jason handled that start well, came down as they laid down a little bit to the left, which is not the direction you want to go right off the bat there. And from then on, just recomposed. They're doing really well. A little bit high and flat through there. That's going to be early on to 11. They managed through there. If they can get through here clean.
70 miles an hour. Pretty decent speed when you think about it on the short track, and they kept it close. Not close enough to hold their spot, but close enough to make it into the sprint. Mazda and Turdeman can do no worse than 15th place. They'll see action tomorrow. Meantime, the Germans have moved up 4 positions rather, and they hold on to the lead.
And that is a difficult line that they took there, just a little bit low and flat off of 10, and it pushes you early into 11, and that's a risky place to be because you can easily roll over there as well in 12. Doesn't set them up great for 13. A little bump even right there before 14. That all builds up into time. I think they would have held that green if that labyrinth was a bit cleaner.
Okay, now the final North American sled, that from the Canadians, Tristan Walker, Justin Smith, and Tristan's cousin, Madison, who's from British Columbia, is here watching today's race as well. She actually lives in Vienna, so she traveled cross-country, despite those strict protocols in Austria right now, to watch Tristan compete. 3 paddles and smooth around the start curve.
Yeah, that's the line you want through that start curve. And I mean, these boys have been known to pull some quick starts on this track and get through the labyrinth. A little bit flat there in the middle, flatter than most lines we've seen going through that midsection. This is kind of the crux for these boys. They've always had difficulties in curve 9.
Oh,
a little
tap,
bump,
but
yeah,
quick
and
recovery.
They held on. Yeah, they held on. They kept their cool.
But does that cost them their spot?
It's going to be right down to the wire on this one. I think they've got it.
Oh, they just by 1/100th of a second. Eggert and Bennigan have moved into the top 13. Again, that's not a big surprise, but we are getting down to the point where the differential between the sleds and these Germans after run number 1 is enough where a good run should change the leader.
That's a great shot. You can see just as the sled is coming off the profile, it's just still pointing to the left. That just means their timing's off by fractions of a second there. But sled, sounds like Tristan's saying the sled's running better. Step by step, they got to keep working on it. Progress.
Big crowd on hand. This is one of 2 tracks in the nation of Austria with the recently completed Blue Dents track, which will host a World Cup women's doubles competition later this season. Now Robin Goyaka and David Gahm, and week in and week out, they break our hearts because we're rooting so hard for the third wheel among the Germans. And it's not as if they haven't had their opportunities that the other 2 teams have given them this season to really make a move.
Yeah, great shot there from behind. That was a beautiful cut that they had going into curve 5. Textbook. And yeah, I think it's just, you cheer for these guys. They're up against tough, 2 of the best teams ever in doubles luge. They are their teammates, and
this
just
is
can't seem
good
to put
looking run.
Yeah, this is a great run for them. They need something to build on going into the Christmas break, and they'll start the second half here in their home track.
To the finish, they will take over the lead. They lose some time to Egert and Bennekin. Keep an eye on that top one. Its second run was a number 2, meaning it was the second fastest run of the heat. It's conceivable no one will have a number 1, that Egert and Bennekin, despite losing the lead right here, will win the heat. That remains to be seen. But Robin and David at least did what they needed to do on one of the 2 runs.
Yeah, great start. You know, it feels so good as an athlete to nail that start curve, because you get right into the groove immediately, and then you can just, these guys know the track so well, you can just kind of start to let the sled run. You don't have to be squeezing the handle so hard, driving so hard. Just get into a rhythm and let it fly.
It's easy to smile when your better run is heat number 2. We move on now. The Italians are having a good day, including 1 sled in podium position. Reeder Rastner hold a 9,000th of a second advantage over Goya Kagam. Their first World Cup victory in their long career as a team came last year in the last race here in Innsbruck. And they finished 5th in the other Innsbruck race, so obviously they're comfortable on this track.
Yeah. Not a super smooth start there, which could eat into the green that they have currently.
Yes, less than 200s.
But nice compact position, aerodynamics looking good. That's a great line through 10. Let's see if they can accelerate down here in the bottom. They've lost more.
They went from green to green, red very briefly, but that's a good sign. They're trending in the right direction, finding time down at the bottom. And this battle for Olympic positions among the Italian doubles team is very reminiscent as it is with the Austrian singles men. I mean, there are 3, they're all capable, they're all good. Who's going to get the call? They seem to jockey back and forth from week to week.
That was a great run. I mean, yeah, back and forth, and it all started right here. Curve 9, beautifully done. It sets them up so perfect for curve 10, and you can just see the sled accelerate coming out of curve 10, which creates so much momentum going into the labyrinth, and, you know, was able to put them back in the green and ultimately keep them hold their position, which is so vital right now.
They shake their heads. Altogether, they were probably expecting better things than the top 10 or 12 or so they'll end up with the victory last year and only 1 podium so far this year. Now from Latvia, Bats and Plume. It looks like a little bit of a scuff on that runner. Did you see that?
I didn't catch that. I was looking over at the first run time for them.
Maybe that's ice on the right side. Yeah, that's
that
water
looks like
drop.
A little bit of a drip. Yeah.
Young Latvian team, surprise World Cup winners in the finale last year on the natural track in San Moritz Arena, Switzerland. That's where the European Championships will be held this year.
A much better start time for them. You know, 2:08 on the first run, a 2:06, but ranked a bit better. And I think this could be a good thing for them. I know that they had a bit of a difficult start, top section. The sled just seems to be moving well. A little bit of a scuff there.
Definite skidding, foot tapped down by Martins.
These smaller doubles teams look so good going through this labyrinth section. It's just compact. They move as one. Wow.
Holding on to their spot. It'll be a top 10 for Bats and Plume. They're in 13th place in the World Cup standings. Inconsistent season. They've had a podium, 1/3. They've had a 5th place finish. But alongside that, they've had a 16th and a 24th.
That line, sled direction is definitely going left right off that. He knew it. The team handled it really well. That can blow up into something much bigger, and they just stayed cool.
Taking a little sit-down break after a day of work. They will be back in action tomorrow. But we continue with run number 2 of the doubles here. The hometown Austrians placed 3 sleds in the top 10, including this 9th place finisher. Yannick Mueller and Armin Frauscher. 1500ths out of the lead, but more to the point, just about, I want to say 200ths ahead of the leading Latvians. Not the leading Latvians after run number one, but the Latvians who just took the lead here.
This is a big run for the hometown group. A little bit high on curve 5 there. They handle it okay. It's those extra meters you don't want to have. You don't want to lose any velocity, which right away into the red.
Armin Frauscher, the bottom man, grew up in Linz, Austria, and if you know this area, you know that's literally a stone's throw. If you have a good arm down at the bottom of the track, you can throw that rock into the town of Linz.
Even though they're in the red, that's a great 10. Let's see if they can build some speed. There it is, right away into the green. These Austrians are just, they know the track so well, so comfortable down low.
Beautiful lines. 39.754, the fastest or second fastest run of the heat. Fastest run still belongs to Egert and Benniken, but it's Mueller and Frauscher, Latvia in second, Italy in third, then two of the three German sleds currently in fourth and fifth place, and we still have 8 remaining here in run number 2.
That's that leaving curve 5. They were a bit high there. You can see him working it around, making sure it doesn't tap that right wall, and then getting it away from the entrance on 6. And then from here down, just flawless. They make a really nice push for speed all the way from exit Kreisel down. So smooth onto 8. That's beautiful. Just not an inch of snow being cut up from the bottom of their runners. That's what you need to do to build speed. Great result for them.
Now the next of the Russians, Andrei Bogdanov and Yuri Prokhorov. And Sam, we've been talking a lot about whether nations can qualify one sled or 2 sleds into doubles, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that each particular country, each specific country, also has its own qualifying standards. And nothing's a guarantee, even if they qualified by the FIL standards.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole other hurdle, right? It's first you got to make sure that your nation gets the quota spots. And then once those quota spots are determined per nation, the specific national sport federation has to determine who's going. And, you know, some teams have stricter qualification standards than the FIL standards. So you might have a quota spot, but you don't fill it, which seems a bit bizarre to me, but that's just how strict it is for some nations.
0.02 of a second is their advantage over the Austrians that just came down. So the last few sleds are certainly holding to form, starting with Goya Kagam, then the Italians, Latvians, Austrians, and now the Russians, all holding onto their places. And the final German sled is coming up next with just 0.08 of a second in the bank.
Russians had a nice run there. That's as smooth of an exit as you can expect out of 9. Sets you up really well for curve 10 to get that line, get that height early, and then once the curve really starts to drop, you just want to accelerate the sled, let it launch out. It's a great feeling. One of the best feelings out of all the tracks is getting that launch out of curve 10.
The two Tobys, the 2-time defending Olympic champions, ready to take this track. Toby Alt put it best earlier in the week when he said, when you're racing under 40 seconds, every mistake is definitely one too many.
That's so true here. You can't afford to have them. And these guys see the position they're in, not where they want to be, but they see top German and they are smelling blood. They're going to attack here.
It looked like calm paddles. And did they have a little bit of a misdirection there?
Yeah, that seemed like it was rough onto curve 5, and then they were working hard. Top Toby was working hard to make sure the sled was straight out of 5.
Vendel and Alt now making their way down through the 8-9 combination with a 0.05 of a second advantage.
Yeah, a little bit, not super smooth 8-9, but let's see how they handle 10. building a lead. That's great. That's good news.
Speed is not among the fastest at 109K, but they should hold on. They do. They find some time down at the bottom, 39.73. Again, the second fastest of the run behind their German teammates, but into the lead. They will be the top placing Germans today, but Sam, it's much more likely than not that Germany will be shut off of the podium.
Yeah, this is not a common thing that we've seen over the years, but I think it just shows the depth of this entire doubles field. You see strong Latvian teams, strong Italian teams. There's just a push from every nation right now to do really well in doubles.
Well, they've probably been down this track more often than anyone not wearing an Austrian suit, or an Italian suit, to be fair.
Definitely World Cups. I mean, yeah, I raced against these guys in junior doubles, and they were young then, and I mean, they've just had tons of years to develop as a team. I mean, it's a brotherhood for sure at this point.
Four-time World Cup winners, Alexander Denisov and Vladislav Antonov, both 30 years old, both from Krasnoyarsk, Russia, which is a small little town that has an indoor bobsled start facility. I'm not sure about Luge.
Could definitely adapt it. Unique thing about Denisov Antonov is their big load at the start. Most doubles teams go pretty shallow into that front load. They go way far forward. It's more of, mimics a single start almost.
Split time upcoming here out of curve 10.
A little flat through curve 10.
They're a tenth of a second back. That does not bode well for a top two finish down here. First sled in a long string that did not hold on to its spot. They dropped 3 positions. So that man, Toby Alt, along with his teammate Toby Vendel, hold on to the lead with 5 sleds remaining.
This is going to be, it's going to be an exciting race right down to the wire now. That's that rough entrance into 5, curve 8 to 9. That was a bit early onto 9. Those little early ons, late offs, it just adds up. Handles exit curve 9 really well.
Top 5 now getting ready to go. Toby Vendel, Toby Alt of Germany lead the way. Here's the second of 3 Austrian teams, Yuri Gatt, Ricardo Schoff. They finished 6th last week. That was by far their best result of the season. And they can do one better, at least, if they hold on to their spot here. Austria with an incredible Olympic tradition in doubles luge. Most recently, Pence and Fischler with silver in 2018. But the Lingner brothers captured back-to-back gold in 2006 and 2010.
Quite a legacy to step into if you're an Austrian doubles team. You got Schiegel.
That's right.
Into Linger, right into Pence Fischler. It's big shoes to fill for these guys, but it seems like, they're not letting off the gas at all.
200's up. Nice exit there. Real quick correction, and let's see how they come out of curve 10.
Yeah, late into curve 10. That's not what you want to be going into that position. In the red, this is going to be close.
300s back at that last split. They pick up a little time, but they fall 1 spot behind the Tobys. Don't count the Germans off of the podium just yet, as Vendel and Alt have moved up 2 spots. They sit in the lead with 4 sleds remaining.
And you see a fist pump from these two, and internally they might be good buds with Mueller and Frauscher, but still that position being 2 spots in front of them is valuable when it comes down to it.
Definitely. We still have another Austrian team, the class of the field, at least from that nation to come, Stoy and Kohler. And then the Latvians who lead the way, Andres and Juris Šīks. But before they go, a couple of Italian teams that are battling for those coveted Olympic positions, World Cup standings. There's a good look at the crowd. From our distant vantage, it appears that everyone is masked. That's good. Emanuel Rieder and Simon Keinswaldner, 4th place. Their advantage is about 900ths over the Tobies.
And they've got some time in their run. First run was a bit rough, so I'd like to see these guys. I think if they put it together through that top section like they did, it's going to be really interesting to see how quick they can be at the bottom.
4th after the first run. That's also their best result of the season. They had a 4th place earlier this year in Sochi. So slim, 800ths. How was that exit of 9?
That was nice. You know, working a little bit hard, a bit of a flop off, but they handled it well. Good, solid rollback. This is going to be right down to it.
It is. 38,000.
This might be on the Tobies. This might be on the Tobies.
As we check them out across the finish, they hang on to their spot.
They found some time. That's great. Really nice.
Good for Rieder Keinswaldner. The Tobies will need some more help now to make it onto the podium, but Italy has clinched at least one podium spot.
Fantastic. They need, you know, they created speed right through that labyrinth. Again, another smaller team allows them to be super compact, work well together. Aerodynamically, that's exactly what you want to see. Emmanuel starts to push his head back there as you drop away there. The track starts to drop away and just shows you. It almost looks like a single sled going through some corners, and that's what you want to see.
Okay, Italy has won its first World Cup podium position of this season in doubles. But the only question remaining is, will there be one or two teams on that podium in about 5 minutes when this race is over? We have 3 remaining, Ivan Nagla and Fabian Malaya. And if memory serves, Sam, it was 4 years ago at the Innsbruck World Cup before the 2018 Olympics that this young team came out of nowhere, ended up on the podium, and unlikely ended up on the Olympic team. Now they've been struggling and inconsistent since, but are they timing everything perfectly again?
Yeah, here we are 4 years later, and they're just finding that a little bit. That's not the line you want going into 5.
Yeah, that was giving a lot away right there at the start.
Yeah. It's so much time there, and especially if you're slowing yourself down, having to make that big cut, correct it out of 5. And it's so flat there into Kreisel and out of Kreisel. It's just so hard to make up speed if you're not.
Especially when we saw what Rieder and Keinswaldner just did with the one quick correction and the clean lines down here in the S's.
Yeah.
Let's see how many they drop back. They drop back 3 spots. And they were in such a good position. I mean, they didn't make the World Cup last week, but with the new FIL protocols for Olympic qualification, they could just forget that event, drop it. But they wanted to make a statement here, and they may limp away a little bit. But still, it will be a top 6, their best result of the year, and they have a chance tomorrow in the sprint.
Right there, a big hook drive. That's just preventing that wall on the right side, but it's digging that right steel into the ice, just slowing you down.
They'll mix.
And they're on. It was pretty decent run. They didn't have that velocity going into the Kreisel, and then it's just that much harder to try and make up the speed down on the bottom.
And there is what I was alluding to, the mixed emotions. Their teammates faltered, but a podium for Emanuel Rieder and Simon Keinswaldner. Now we make our way down to the final 2. Again, you see the advantage, 4 nearly 500ths the Austrians have over the current leaders, but only 1/1000th of a second separates Stroy and Kohler from the next sled to go, the final sled, the Latvians. They need to be perfect, and often they have been in the last couple of years.
And great looking start there for Stroy Kohler. I think these guys are looking eyes forward, nothing behind them. They know what they have to do to get the job done. That's a great Kreisel, nice and smooth into 8. See how they handle 9, because this is the crux.
Perfect.
Beautifully done.
The advantage here will be telling. It's
nice
1300ths. They could push that up to 18 or so, and then that would put the pressure on the Latvians. to the
These
finish.
guys had the finish in sight.
1700s up on the field, at least a top two, possibly another victory for Stoy and Kohler. That will be determined with the next sled. And 3 races so far this year, Sam, for these Austrians. A win, a second, and now no worse than second.
So impressive to see these guys, be removed due to an injury, come back into the competitive atmosphere and just take off right where they left off. It's just, and they knew right away, great start.
It was
at their finish, they knew right away. What a run.
Stoy's second broken leg in 3 years, and in both occasions, the team has come back with flying colors.
Yeah, what's up with that? The Tyrolean milk is so delicious. You've got
Yeah. Well, Tony Yeager did the same thing, actually, a couple of years ago, where he broke his leg during the offseason, and then they won the first World Cup the next year. Stoy and Kohler will watch now as the most experienced sled and pair of athletes in the entire sport of World Cup luge get ready at the top. Andras Schicks, Juris Schicks, 36 and 38 years old respectively, saving the best for last. 6 World Cup victories all over the last 2 seasons to go along with their 3 Olympic medals, 2 in doubles, 1 in relay.
Yeah, if there's a team at the start that aren't going to get fazed by being 1,000th ahead of the team right behind them, it's this group of guys. They are competitors through and through, and they're peaking at the right time. Way behind right now at a Kreisel. I don't know if they can make that up. We'll see.
We have seen the Latvian sleds all season. Fine time down at the bottom, but 400s on this track in Innsbruck.
Here it is, chipping away. They're chipping away. If they can get through 13 clean into 14, it's going to be really close.
They are clean. They're heading uphill to the finish, and they do not gain any more time. Victory for Austria on their home ice. The crowd goes wild down at the bottom. Still a second place, another race, another podium for the brothers Schicks, who will continue to lead in the World Cup standings.
They're going to walk away from that and learn from it. It's another thing. It all adds to the build up to Beijing. Gives you every lesson. You got to take it and learn from it.
Meantime, Stoy and Kohler, unbelievable. They missed 2 races as we check out, and there's not much to dissect here. They were just going up against a perfect run.
Yeah, I think Stoy Kohler, they dialed that top section into Kreisel, and, Juris and Andras just a little bit behind at the start there. They just needed it, they needed 200 more meters and they had it.
And despite missing 2 of 5 races, I think Stoy and Kohler are going to wiggle their way up into the top 5 in the World Cup standings. And we say one more time, these athletes in the Olympic qualifying are able to drop 2 races or 3 races, regardless of whether it was equipment, military restrictions, or injury. And Stoy and Kohler will be among the best in the world when they add up those modified points. They win it over Latvia. Italy has a great day. The Austrians have an incredible day with 3 in the top 8. Egert and Bennekin just behind Goyek and Gam, but all 3 German sleds will be a factor tomorrow as the Canadians and the Americans also make their way into the sprint competition with the last 2 spots.
Yeah, it's super great to see Chris and Jason, Tristan and Justin get in there, sneak in. Every run is valuable this year, every race run, so good for them.
So the medals and the flowers are being passed out. Help yourself. They don't allow the dignitaries to award the flowers and the medals, although we certainly saw a fair amount of non-masked interviewing happening down there at the bottom.
That's a good feeling, though, right in front of the home crowd.
Yeah.
Especially after a season of Noke fans, this is what it's all about.
The best doubles teams in the world are not currently Germans, and that fact alone is incredible. It's Austria and Latvia, the class of this season and last, and It'll be interesting to see how the rest of this Olympic season plays out. World Cup standings upcoming. The Latvians obviously stay out in front. This does not factor in the sprint points, which will come up in a second. Look at Stoyan Kola. They've missed 40% of the races, but they are in the top 4 in the standings. Canada sitting in a tie for 15th place with the surging Italian team of Nagler and Malaya. Go ahead, Sam.
Performance on demand. That's to me, Stoy Kohler just, they know what they've got to do to get it done this year.
Meantime, Egert and Benniken maintain a spot in the top 2 here, working in the sprint results, as Germany is 2 and 4. And they will award Crystal to the World Cup overall with the sprint, and even a little Joska Crystal will go to the sprint overall champion for those 4 events. Well, that wraps it up for day number 1. Lots of exciting racing, Sam. Thanks so much for all of your perspective and analysis.
Tim, I had a blast. It's, I loved racing in the Eagles. Watching a race, I didn't think it'd be as fun as it was. I had a blast with you. I appreciate it. Wishing you a very Merry Christmas.
To you too, and a Happy New Year. Sam will be back on New Year's Day for the call of the racing in Winterberg. But I'll be back right here tomorrow, women's and sprint. Kate Hansen will join for the call. Until then, for all of us in Innsbruck, I'm Tim Singer. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.